Aboro aboye. Aboshishe. Welcome. Blessings to everybody. In an unprecedented move, going live twice in one day. Can you believe it? All right. Hope all is well with you and your loved ones. We're going to give folks a minute or two to join us, to dial in, and then we're going to make good use of our time together to chat about self-discovery deeper than your natural gifts and talents. So I want to give people just a minute or two. Hold on tight if you need to get some water or anything like that. You've got a minute to do that. Take your time, and we're going to dive in. We're over here enjoying the greetings to you. Greetings, Queenie. Blessings. Hope all is well with you. Yeah, we're enjoying the weather. It's springtime. Spring in the Bay is always good. And yeah, things are looking nice. We're going to take the conversation deeper. We're on a mission, and it's a good mission. Blessings, welcome. Roll call. Where are y'all? Where y'all located? While we wait for people to file in and join us, where are you located? How many folks? We have any folks in Trinidad? Any folks East Coast? Yes, all is well. All right, Miami, nice. It's been a long time since I was in Miami. Long time actually. The other Sunshine State, Florida. Where else folks coming from? Nigeria. Nice. It's kind of late right now, right? Let's see. Must be kind of late. Must be like what, 9-10 o'clock at night in Nigeria right now. Wow. Thank you for joining us. Oh yeah, I would love to be in Miami. It's been such a long time. I was in Miami, Fort Lauderdale. Those are the only two places I know in Florida. Iowa. Nice. I've never been to, yes, I have been to Iowa. Yes, I have been at 10:30 p.m. Okay, nice. Yeah, Iowa was interesting. Iowa, Nebraska. I think that was one trip that I made. We moved around both in Iowa and Nebraska. Des Moines. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Miami. Iowa. Nigeria. Beautiful. You know, as soon as you leave California, it's like a culture shock everywhere we go. You know, everywhere I go anyway. I love traveling though, and getting around, seeing different places. You learn a lot, and I've come to appreciate a lot of the things here that you know are native to California. Things that we take for granted. You know, like things around the environment. You know. I really appreciate how, you know, California has a bias towards the environment, you know, air quality and nature, you know what I mean? All those things are, they're important. There's a high, you know, value here in California, you know, so when I go other places and I see it's not there, I'm like, wow, what's up with that? Because the world is so beautiful, the planet is so beautiful, and are very few places I've ever gone where I felt like it wasn't just a slice of heaven, you know. Just about every place has something really remarkable and beautiful. And I attribute that to my upbringing here in California. Um, and so what I want to do right now is in this part of the conversation is tap into the most important environment, which is our internal environment. And this is a continuation of an ongoing conversation that we've been having during the quarantine. I started off the conversation with an exploration of some lessons on leadership in the face of crisis. And that part of the conversation was really primarily geared towards people who are leaders of organizations, people who are leaders of temples, community groups, cultural groups. If you have 300 people who depend on you, who you support in one way or another, that series was for you. Of course, there's something in there for everybody, but my intent was to really speak to the condition of people who are in leadership. Then the next lesson was more geared towards the solo operator, the individual who has some talent or some interest that they use to serve other people. And I wanted to give you some tips on how you can monetize and professionalize your service for people, right? So if you're a yoga teacher or an astrologist or a babalawo and a yalorisha, a Reiki worker, a massage therapist, people like that, you know what I mean? That, people come to you and they depend on you for something, but maybe it's you're doing this a bit of as a hobby, right? But you're looking at, hey, how can I transform this under the circumstances and be, make money from what I do, and money from what I love, right? And what people love me for. So that was my intent, with that second series of lessons. There was really one lesson broken down into 5 steps. And earlier, there was another lesson that was drilling down a little bit further into a more universal message for all of us, which is how we organize our day. How do you structure your day in such a way that you can not only be productive, but you can also be fulfilled? How do you structure your day? You create a schedule every day so that you're actually excited, about getting things done, right? And so today I want to drill down a little bit further. And this particular lesson is about really getting into self-discovery. Okay, how do you get to know yourself? Because usually when I talk to you about self-discovery, I frame the conversation up by discovering your natural gifts and talents. All right, and that's a deliberate process. I frame the conversation up in knowing your natural gifts and talents because I know that your natural gifts and talents are a window. Okay, if you use your natural gifts and talents as a template, as a filter for seeing yourself and for seeing how you engage with the world, your natural gifts and talents are going to reveal to you some other aspects of who you are, how you operate, and what you bring to the table. I categorize natural gifts and talents in the same place that people typically will talk about your ori inu, your inner head, right? Your inner being, your essence, how you show up in the world, what you bring to the table, and what you use to make a meaningful contribution. It isn't exactly who you are, but if you really get deeply into it, it'll you know what I mean. You will more than likely come in contact with the you who has chosen those natural gifts and talents. All right. So it's been very deliberate that over the years I've been talking about your natural gifts and talents. Today I want to go a step further, and I want to give you some insights into self-discovery beyond your natural gifts and talents. Get you a little bit closer to that self who is, like I said, is the one who chooses your natural gifts and talents. And so, in order to do that, what I want to do is give you a little backstory about, how this has come to mind. Right, we're on quarantine and we're locked down, as they say, and I can't keep, from remembering my time in Trinidad. Recently, I was in Trinidad and I participated in a 7 day ceremony. And in this 7 day ceremony, um, I would characterize it in two ways. On one hand, it's about extreme deprivation, right? Your motion, your movement is limited. You're deprived movement. Likewise, you're deprived light. You're deprived food, right? So it's fasting and praying. Okay. At the same time, it's extreme sensory aggravation, specifically pain. You are put into a situation where when you do this ceremony, you feel very intense pain. I felt very intense pain. And so the combination of being both deprived of light and movement and food, and at the same time being um, um, subjected to painful situations or subjected to a painful experience, it really drives you inward. You know what I mean? It forces you to um, explore the inner reaches of outer space. And what I mean by that is during the ceremony, I took an inward journey where I came into contact with the cosmos within my own consciousness. Like there's a whole universe of consciousness within yourself. And through this ceremony, um, in Trinidad, they call it morning. Morning. You pronounce it moaning, but it's mourning. Like we would say, you would mourn the dead. And it's a supremely enlightening ceremony because it forces you to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper within yourself. And I was really quite astonished, to be honest with you. I was really quite astonished by uh, the elements of myself that I discovered, on the way in. And so as I'm experiencing the quarantine, I'm inadvertently reminded of that experience. It just it's a stabilizing experience. Your memories of what it's like to be still and sit down and introspect and meditate and really check in with all of the different signs and symbols and stimulus that I encounter while I have to be still. As my frustrations kick in, as my anxieties are peaked, as my interests, you know what I mean, they kind of go unexpressed. I'm being deprived. There's like a muscle memory that reminds me, yeah, well, this is what it's like when you're on the ground, and I just, I go back within myself. And so I want to share with you some of the things that I discovered along the way and sort of light the path for you to take advantage of this moment and take your own inward journey and discover yourself beyond your natural gifts and talents and absolutely beyond your daily routine and the you know what I mean, the hamster wheel that you're always on day in and day out, year after year, and you kind of call that your reality. All right, because you know you're not your personality. You are not your thoughts and your ideas. You are not your wants. You're not your fears. You know what I mean, those are parts of what inform your reality, um, and they are the culmination of all your experiences. But they don't define your identity. Those are not who you actually are. And likewise, for us who are Orisha devotees, I'm not talking about your Odu. This is not your Odu. This is not your Orisha. Okay. This isn't your particular tradition, what Afro-Cuban, West African, Dahomey, and Trinidad. Right? It's not that. It's beyond all of that. Those things are great frameworks for the energy to flow, for the consciousness to flow, and your awareness to be awakened. But I'm talking about beyond that. I'm talking about you, the real you who exists within those systems, the you that is practicing this tradition, the you that serves one Orisha or another, the you for whom a certain Odu manifests. I'm talking about that person, you know what I mean, within those different shells. That's what we're aiming at in this particular conversation. I really want you to go deeper, all right? Because if you don't go deeper, and if you insist upon holding onto these outer trappings, these shells, what you're going to do is you're going to be limited by the frameworks that those things provide for you. You're going to be limited by even what other people tell you about those particular things. Okay, and those are just points of reference. They're important, but they are just points of reference. All right, and I want you to be able to go beyond those things. Part of the journey, well, I will say the journey itself that I'm talking about, it begins with your acknowledgement and your admission that in spite of all of those things, I don't know myself, right? And so that's a difficult realization for a lot of us, especially if we're invested in different things. We're invested in the tradition. We're invested in priesthood. I am a Babalawo, so I always have to preface these conversations by really saying to people, I really am a Babalawo. I really do practice Ifa. I really do believe in Ifa. I'm not just going through the motions. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that Ifa is real and it is functional, and the word of Ifa is true, right? So it's not a question of faith or belief or, experience. I am sincere in my practice, in my devotion. But it's precisely my sincerity in the practice and the devotion that has to continue to urge you to see yourself and to discover yourself for who you really and truly are. And that discovery begins with you admitting that you don't know who you actually are. You gotta acknowledge very, very clearly for yourself that, yeah, my Odu points me in a direction, but it doesn't tell me who I am. Yeah, knowing who my Orisha is, it gives me some frameworks. It doesn't tell me who I am, right? And so once you can acknowledge that, once you can admit that, then you're really ready to take the journey. Okay? Now you're really, really ready to take the journey. And the reason why that's the first step to being able to really take the journey is because it's not until you remove the fantasy that those things define who you are that you will be ready to truly observe yourself. Let me say that again. It's not until you remove the fantasy that those things, that your thoughts, your ideas, your personality, your Odu, your Orisha, if you don't take those away, you're never going to start with the realization that you don't know who you are. You're going to be starting with, you're going to be starting with a kind of a prefabbed something, and so it's only when you take all of those prefab, like, exterior things away that you really will see, well, you know what? I don't know exactly what I'm dealing with here. I don't know exactly what I'm dealing with. And let me back it up or change directions a little bit to give you another idea. We know in the scientific realm, right? Physicists, we trust and we cherish things like science and physics and all that kind of stuff. But when you really get into it, the physicists don't know what energy is. We talk about energy. We don't know what energy actually is. We don't know what energy is. Nobody can define it. No one can go back to the beginning of energy. That's why the Big Bang Theory and all that, the creation of the world, all those things are like eternal questions and never ending dilemmas because we can't define it. We can describe energy. We can say how energy behaves under different circumstances. We can say how energy affects other things. But we can't really get down to this is what energy is. Right? So it's a very similar thing that I'm trying to present to you right now. Yeah, this Odu can tell you how energy behaves. Yes, if you serve that orderly shard, then yeah, it can give you an idea of how that energy behaves. But you got to get in contact with the energy because you are that. It's what is flowing. That it is what is flowing through you or what you are flowing with that we're trying to get closer to right now. All right. So I want you to go deeper. All right. And I want you to really take your time and go slow and be comfortable with the idea of shedding some of these external identifiers that you may have been holding on to define yourself. All right. And so once you can observe yourself like a scientist would observe energy, once you can just observe it calmly, patiently, objectively, with humility, it's going to create this opportunity for you to see yourself without filters, to see yourself without judgment, okay? To see yourself without trying to determine that because I do this or I don't do this, it must mean something else, right? Take a step back on that, pause on that impulse and just observe yourself, all right? So as you remove the blinders or as you remove the filters, as you remove the different exterior trappings, you're now more free to observe yourself. Okay? You're able to observe yourself feeling a certain way. You're able to observe yourself thinking certain thoughts. You're able to observe yourself saying certain words. You're able to observe yourself acting out in a certain kind of a way. Okay? And you can then, as you observe, you can distance yourself from that feeling and distance yourself from that thought and distance yourself from those words and distance yourself from those behaviors and just observe and inquire about them, right? You may be tempted to say, well, oh my God, what kind of a thing was that to say? Or that was such a smart response, or that was such a really, such a fluid movement. What a great move that was, right? But before you do that, engage yourself in another level of inquiry. What kind of person makes that kind of a statement under these circumstances? What kind of a person acts this way? What type of a person, expresses those kinds of emotions? Right? And you just observe your responses to those questions that you pose to yourself. What's the quality of this being who thinks a certain way, talks a certain way, acts a certain way, feels a certain way? Okay? All of this is going to get you closer. It's going to get you closer, and it's going to get you closer to actually discovering who you are, because you are not your thoughts, and you are not your emotions, and you are not your sensations, you are not your behavior. You are not. You are the one who chooses your thoughts, and you're the one who chooses your words, and you choose your emotions, and you choose your sensations. You choose your behavior. The real you is the chooser. Okay? And so this exercise that I'm giving you now is going to create a habit of allowing you to slow your process down and get deeper and deeper and deeper into yourself as the chooser. All right? Now, if you don't take the time to observe yourself as the chooser, what's going to happen? You're going to be tempted to judge your behavior. You're going to be tempted to assess it. So it's different from observation. And if you assess your behavior, if you assess your thoughts, if you assess your feelings, you're going to invariably want to make them good or bad, right? If you right, and if you make them good or bad, you're probably going to want to make them good. You're going to tend more towards good. You're going to justify everything that you think, feel, say, and do, and you're going to want it to be good. The proverb that the Yoruba say is very famous, that every man's character is good in his own mind. Okay, every man's character is good in his own mind, and it's that kind of thinking that we end up projecting out onto the divinities, right? We project this idea that that everything that they do is good, and so one of my favorite questions is does Eshu have good character, right? And as of late, people have become very preoccupied with the idea of Iwakpele. Iwakpele, everything revolves around Iwakpele. And of course, we have a very narrow definition of what Iwakpele is, and it ends up being a projection of Puritanism, right? The Ten Commandments, right? If you talk to people about what the Iwakpele is, you're going to pretty quickly hear that they're talking about the Ten Commandments or some kind of Puritanism. And my question is just, does Eshu have Iwakpele? Does he have gentle character? Right? And people will quickly say, so, well, let's look at the stories. Let's observe. Let's observe, 50 episodes in the existence of Eshu. And let's just observe them. And let's see, is it gentle? Is it, what is gentle about it? What kind of being does the kinds of things that Eshu does? Right? Similarly with the Awanyami Agba, the what people commonly call as witches. We are now moving to a stage where people are projecting this idea of the Iyami as like fairy godmothers. And we want everything that they do to be good. Everything that they do is to be benevolent. Or somehow it's just we want to rationalize the things that are apparently unsavory, and we want them to be good, right? But it has nothing to do with our real observation of Iyami. It has everything to do with our projection of ourselves. We got all these unresolved problems with our own identity, our own truth, within ourselves, who we really are and what makes us up, or projecting it out onto our idea of the divinities and our idea of the text, without really looking at the lives of the divinities themselves, without really looking at what those things do and how they function and how they manifest, just objectively, right? Because we're so quick to try to judge whether it's good or bad. We want everything to be good. Who wants to be talking about that they're involved with something that's, patently not good? Okay, so it's a natural outcome of our our psychology. We can't accept certain things. So this process will save you from that, right? Because I don't want you to wrap yourself deeper and deeper. You're trying to come to a Orisha lifestyle for truth. You're trying to practice the tradition for, a higher level of realization, but you won't get there if all you're doing is projecting your old self and your old mental models onto the divinities or the sacred text. All right. So it's really important that you become adept at observing, just observing, right? What is actually happening in your mind? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you saying? What are you doing? All right. When you look at things like Eshu or Iyami, at the very best, what you're going to see is our ambivalence towards power, our ambivalence towards the intellect, our ambivalence towards talent, and sort of this infinite spectrum of ability, right? We're not quite sure if they're good or not, right? And that's where those different entities fall into the psychology of our spiritual practice. You can put them into the category of they reflect our ambivalence and our uncertainty and our inability to conclude whether or not those things are good or bad. Is it good or bad that you want to behave a certain way? Is it good or bad that you have a certain ability and you can actually get away with doing certain things that other people can't get away with? You really can. We're not quite sure how we feel about that, right? We're ambivalent, all right? But at the very least, I want you to be able to observe yourself in all circumstances and under all conditions and just make note and ask yourself, keep asking yourself, what kind of person does certain things? What kind of person acts in this way? What kind of a person feels this strongly about certain situations? And just keep asking and keep suspending your judgment. That's the exercise. Just to continue to suspend your judgment. Observe yourself, but suspend your judgment. Observe yourself, but suspend your judgment. Okay? This takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of patience, but it's worth it. All right? This is the only way for you to really get clear about who you are and what you're here to do. All right? So, one of the things that I do really love about Orisha devotion is that it's a collective observation of um, the human experience. Okay? Because Orisha lifestyle belongs to antiquity, and the Odu Ifa represents the living record of antiquity. It is a repository of human consciousness from the Yoruba perspective. Okay, in the tens of thousands of Odu Ifa, you get just an infinite number of facets of the human experience. What the possibilities are, right? What human potential really can be, right? And within the Orisha themselves, you get all of those things are sort of clustered. They're condensed into a sphere of possibilities, right? And of course, we like certain aspects of it. We like that Shango is powerful and flamboyant and charismatic. We like that Oshun is ultra magnetic and beautiful and emanates this harmony. We like that Obatala is supremely upright and pious and clean. We like that. But there's another aspect of all of those divinities that is their shadowy nature. All of the divinities also have a shadowy nature. And if we make the time to observe them in their fullness, we'll also get a glimpse of their shadow. We'll get a glimpse of that aspect of them that is unsavory, is distasteful, it's frightening, it's destructive, right? Those are aspects of the divinities that are equally important. And as a matter of fact, when you really start to look at the lives of the divinities and you look at how they became divinities, you're going to find so many instances wherein it was through their shadows that the divinities became deified. Ogun goes on a killing spree. Ogun destroys, right? Some of the Oriki Ogun says Ogun killed the father in the doorway. Ogun killed the mother in the foyer. Then Ogun went into the backyard and he killed all of the children in the patio. Right? Ogun is a dangerous divinity. Well, that is revealing for us the shadowy nature of Ogun. But Oshun has a shadow, Obatala has a shadow, Shango has a shadow, Oya, Yemoja, Olokun, all of the divinities have a shadow. And so when we look at their shadows, then we get a chance to understand. Because when we look at their shadows, then we get to see how they reconciled those shadows. And this is the opportunity for learning for ourselves. They give us an example of what happens when the divinities reconcile their shadows. When they reconcile their shadows, what I mean is that they figure out how they can take their shadow and incorporate it into a higher a higher order of their thinking. They integrate their shadow nature into a cause greater than themselves. They through the misuse of their shadow or the misuse of their powers, their shadows are revealed, and they then use their power and their ability to serve something greater than themselves, right? And so the manifestation of the shadow gone out of control, then reveals to the divinities, where their limitations are, and it makes them docile. It makes them tame, right? It makes them serve something, like I said, greater than themselves. They have to submit themselves. And so it is with us. As we get deeper and deeper into our shadow natures, we discover it, and we shine the light of our consciousness onto our shadowy natures. Then we learn just how frail we are, but we learn how powerful we are in our frailty, right? It's because if you didn't have this power, you couldn't do damage. If you didn't have this power, you couldn't create mayhem. If you didn't have this power, you couldn't disrupt the flow. So you have a power, but then you have a flaw that caused you to misuse that power. And so by acknowledging that, you have to acknowledge the source of both the power and the flaw, and what it will take for you to, use that flaw, use that power, and the power that created you, or the power that gave you that force, to be able to transcend your own frailty. It's a, very contradictory in a way form of thinking, but when you hit rock bottom within your own consciousness, you understand what it's all about, and how you have to rely upon something greater than yourself, a higher level of consciousness that is still within you, but it resides beyond you. Okay. And so, as you come to, let's say, for example, you look at the life of a divinity, and you see how, for example, Obatala, one of the things that we know him all for is Obatala is charged with creating people. He's the sculptor for Olodumare. In the process, he gets drunk and he starts sculpting people. He makes mistakes. And in the making of mistakes, there are people who have now deformities, right? And then Obatala loses his position. He's no longer the head. Otudua takes over from Obatala, right? But what does Obatala do to reconcile that shadow? Obatala then swears, I will no longer get drunk. I won't drink a certain kind of palm oil. I won't drink a certain kind of palm wine. And all of those special people will become my children. So all of the people with deformities and mental disabilities are automatically the children of Obatala. And once upon a time, if you went to the Obatala temple, onto the Obatala compound, you would find those dwarves and humpbacks and albinos, and all those people would be his special wards. They would live there with Obatala. That's the way Obatala reconciles his shadow, right? He takes full accountability and ownership of everything that he did, but he continues to create. Okay? And so within yourself, what happens is you will learn to set goals for yourself. When you look at and when you fully reconcile your shadow, you'll learn to set goals for yourself. And then you'll learn to create boundaries for yourself that protect those goals. Okay? And then over time, as you continue to make different decisions to reach the goal and respect the boundaries, then your character is going to be formed. Okay? But your character is based on a reality, and that reality is the full spectrum of your experience. All right? And so within the tradition, we talk about, your taboos. Those are the boundaries. But you set those boundaries naturally, and those boundaries are real because you've lived them and you understand what happens when you exceed that boundary. You know what happens. You know how your strengths and your weaknesses get confused, and you end up, destroying things, or you end up interrupting things that you don't want to interrupt. Okay? And so the journey of self-discovery must include you reaching the full limits of your boundaries, getting to the the full limit of your capabilities, and understanding what it means when you exceed those limits. One of my favorite mantras when it comes to self-discovery is that the only way for you to know what you have, the only way for you to know who you are, is for you to be tested. And if you don't test yourself, if you don't create the situation wherein you subject yourself to being tested, then the universe, fate itself, your fate will test you on its own. It will create some situations, natural situations, inevitable situations where you must be tested involuntarily, right? So the wise thing to do is to test yourself, to subject yourself to some kind of a format and some kind of a practice that will strategically and deliberately strip away your ego consciousness, that will strip away your self concept and that kind of aspect of yourself that you want to project out into the world. Okay, and so this is why I alluded to the ceremony that I did in Trinidad, for example. It was a voluntary thing. Okay, but little by little, day by day, you have the opportunity to create those opportunities to test yourself just by the earlier exercise I gave about observing yourself, right? That's a small test that you subject yourself every day. And little by little, you observe yourself and you suspend judgment, and you observe yourself and you suspend judgment. But then beyond that, you venture out and you try to do different things and explore different aspects of your own consciousness so that you can grow and you can expand your self concept. Um, and if you're sincere about it, if you really are giving yourself tests, if you really are setting the kinds of goals that will take you out of your comfort zone, then you will, by definition, stress yourself a little bit. You know what I mean. You will pressure yourself just enough to be able to constantly be made humble, to be constantly getting tame and being uncomfortable and going out of your comfort zone, and discovering a deeper level of gratitude for the source of your experience, the source of your authority, as well as the power that keeps everything in order. It's an experience, right? When If you ever read the book Siddhartha, right? There was one part in the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse where Siddhartha, the young boy who had left his home, right? He came from a privileged background, but he had this balance of wisdom and wealth. His mind was kind of balanced. He could have gone one way and become very powerful in the world, and he could have gone the other way and become very powerful in his spirituality. And something happened where he saw suffering, and the suffering evoked his spiritual consciousness, and so he decided he's going to leave home, and he was going to become a wandering, begging priest. In the process, he ends up finding a priest, who really had reached enlightenment. And he could see that this man was really enlightened. Everything about him emanated enlightenment. But in the instant that Siddhartha realized that this was the real deal, that this one was really and truly enlightened, he realized, well, there's nothing that he can teach me because the enlightenment that he has is internal. It's coming from the inside out. He's not going to be able to tell me how to have that experience. Likewise, that's what I'm trying to convey to you. It's not something that anybody can tell you. I could tell you your Odu. I could tell you your taboos. I could tell you what Orisha you should serve. I could tell you all kinds of things like that. But I can't tell you who you are in that journey. I can't tell you how to come in contact with the impulse and the actual experience of what it means to be the person who lives that Odu or serves that Orisha or has to keep those taboos. You are the only one who can, experience that. That's when it becomes real. And so I want to, come closer to the close by sharing with you one of my favorite quotes from Carl Jung, the analytical psychologist. Carl Jung says that there's no coming to consciousness without pain. There's no coming to consciousness without pain. Key. Now, this is why you have to submit yourself to a program, to a process. This is why you have a mentor. This is why you have a teacher, right? Because the pain, if you've ever tried to cut yourself, if you've ever tried to injure yourself, you don't want to do it. You can't do it. It's really hard to injure yourself. So you gotta get into some place where somebody's gonna stage a program. They're gonna stage an experience that will make you uncomfortable. You know what I mean? It's gonna make you uncomfortable. Um, People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul, and they will. They will. We will. There's no limit to how far we'll go to avoid that pain, to avoid the idea of pain. There's almost no limit, right? And I know because I have brought people right to the threshold. And if you want to see some behavior, you bring somebody to the very threshold of self-discovery. You bring them to right there to the gates of freedom, and you will see some really interesting behavior, some really ironic, right? It's ironic that you would think, hey, here's the gate, you're free, and if the person is not willing to take that next step, they will do anything. They'll do anything to stay right there in their comfort zone. Okay. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light. I like that line, right? Because to me, that's where it becomes, look, you're not going to become Oshun. You're not going to become Shonko. You are not going to become Obatala, right? You're not going to become enlightened by imagining figures of light. Don't turn those Orisha into imaginary figures of light, okay? One becomes enlightened by making the darkness conscious. One comes to enlightenment by making the darkness consciousness, making it conscious. That is where you are taking the light of your awareness and your consciousness, and you're pointing it inward. You're looking inward always within yourself to discover, hey, what kind of person thinks this way? What would make somebody feel this strongly about this situation? What kind of a person is it who would act in such a way under these conditions? This is you observing yourself without judgment and with calm and peace, a little by little, every single day. All right? If you can do those things, you will grow, you will expand, you will discover yourself from the inside out. So that is my instruction for today. Um, and as always, I uh, invite you to engage me in conversation. I'm here to talk about these ideas and these experiences. So if you've got any questions or insights, please feel free to raise them right now. I'd be more than happy to respond. And otherwise, you can always put them in the content section, and I'll be more than happy to respond at a later date. But yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to dive in, and I'll be more than happy to respond as possible. I'm gonna listen to a bit of Kunde. All right, so I don't see any questions, and this is typical. So I don't see questions until after the fact. So that's okay. But you know what my policy is by now. Just about all of these lessons in the same way, with one request. You got one assignment, okay? You got one assignment, and your assignment is to identify 3 people within the next 24 hours. I need you to talk to 3 people. All right, 3, 1, 2, 3. From voice to ear, I need you to talk to 3 people about what we chatted about today. What stood out for you? What questions do you have? Okay, what really made sense to you, right? What was like, bang, the aha moment for you in this conversation? Take it to 3 people and talk to them about it, all right? And I guarantee that if you're able to do that, then the lesson is going to sink in deeper, and you're going to get more out of it, and you're going to be able to make better use of it going forward, all right? So that being said, I wish you all the best. I pray that your journey of self-discovery is is frightful but fulfilling, and that you have the willpower as well as the flexibility and the confidence in your destiny to be able to transcend any of the forces that would threaten to prevent you from realizing your destiny in this time. Many blessings to you. I look forward to talking to you guys soon. Bye for now. Odabo.